Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you guys 5 ways that you can blend colored pencil. Now the ways I'm going to show you today you can do with any type of colored pencil, like either oil-based or wax-based. So between those two types of leads you can blend the same way with either or. So I have some Bristol paper, just plain Bristol smooth paper, and I have my Caran Dache Luminance pencils. So the first one we're going to do is basically just layering. That's the simplest way that you start learning how to blend. So I'm going to start with a lighter purple. And what you're going to do is just do smooth strokes through the bottom here, working upward and gradually working into that darker color. But you want to make sure the strokes are nice and smooth, so they make a nice seamless transition into one another. And you want to pay attention to your pressures as you're working from each color. What I like to do to make a nice, even, smooth stroke is to do vertical, go vertical first and then switch, vertical first and then go to horizontal to kind of crisscross those stroke patterns, because it will make it nice and smooth. Then I'm going to lift my hand a little bit and go lighter as I work up, because I'm going to start the second color, which is like a mid-tone purple. So try not to take the pencil off the page too much. You just start with light layers working into the previous color and then keep going upward. Now my darker color. Now, whatever blending method you choose is going to be different, unless you have a certain preference that you like to do with all your drawings. Like my preference would be solvent, but not every case would work as well as another. So for example, like this layering one, this works with everything. It's very, very time consuming. And that is one of the frustrations I know a lot of artists express, is time, because colored pencil is a very time-consuming medium when you're doing just layering. So that's why I like to show some of the other methods, because not one method is good for everybody. And I'm going to go back and work back into that mid-tone color and just keep building. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe below. I'll be posting more and more videos like this in the near future as I start to do this more and more. And I also have a Patreon page where I have real-time tutorials of many different subjects, a lot of wildlife, and a lot of textures and detailed subjects like animals' eyes, paws, the different anatomy of the animals, some still lifes, seasonal things, and more. And that's at patreon.com/Christy Nicole Fine Art. So when we get into the other types of blending, you're going to be, it's changing. When I first discovered solvent, it opened up new doors as far as just the potential of what I could do because of the time. Sometimes just the time alone is what a lot of people don't have. And being able to speed up just a portion of your drawing is the best without, ruining your quality. Now you can layer as much or as little as you want. The more you layer to the point where there's not much tooth left on the paper, without pressing down, that would be burnishing, which is what we'll do next. You'll see the difference in what that does. But you don't have to layer. It depends on what your style is too. I mean, I personally really like a very smooth outcome. I like it to be bold, and I like my drawings to be to not show any pencil grain. And that's just a preference that I've always had. I like to have things nice and smooth and make sure that my drawings look, as photorealistic as possible. All right, so that's just layering, your basic layering with your pencils. So that, like I said, not my preferred, but that's the best way to start learning. You always want to learn how to layer first before you ever blend. So the next one is burnishing. So this is basically, I got a few layers down, but burnishing is when you press the pencils harder and harder until you're actually pressing the tooth down so much where it's smooth. So this is a great thing to do when you have when you're doing portraits, anything with skin tone, something very smooth like glassware, things like that. So basically what I do is I just start pressing a little bit harder, and typically you want to start with the lighter color of the varied colors that you have. And you just want to start pressing a little bit harder as you're working through. Now, I don't like this method because it hurts my wrists, and that's where solvent comes in, because that's much less stress on your wrists. Because if you were to burnish a whole entire drawing, I can't imagine it wouldn't hurt anybody's wrists, but it does produce phenomenal outcomes, especially with wax pencils, to get a nice smooth look. So even though I put some of those base layers down, I'm still adding more color, but as I build up, I'm just pressing a little bit harder until eventually the tooth of the paper is going to be gone and I won't be able to add any more. So it's basically like layering, but you just keep going and press harder. Another thing with burnishing is it does create lots of the flakes on the paper that you'll have to get rid of. Now the lighter color, I'm probably going to go over a lot of the middle area with this too. All right, and that is burnishing. So you see how nice and smooth that is. So the next one is my preferred method, which is solvent. And when you use solvent, there's a few different solvents. I have another solvent video that I posted a couple weeks ago you can check out, showing the differences in solvents, which I didn't find much difference. So I'm going to use the Gamsol solvent. I usually put my solvent in a little jar like this because you want to keep it covered whenever you're not using it. So keep that in mind, and always have a paper towel handy to wipe your brush off. So I'm going to use a, let's see here, just going to use a Taklon bristled brush. And you want to wipe off, once you dip it in the solvent, make sure you wipe off your brush quite a bit because you want to get most of that solvent off, because a little bit does go a long way. I'm going to start at the bottom. Actually, I'm going to switch my brush up. I changed my mind. I'm going to use my filbert brush. I like these ones better. Now, solvent is something you don't want to use too much of, because a little bit does go a long way. And if you use too much of it, it will show a like oily spots, and it will bleed into the other blank part of the paper. So you don't want that to happen. So practice with just a few colors, and practice the amount of solvent that you have in the brush, and blend until you know you have the right consistency. But solvent is one of those things that kind of changed the game for me, because it's, like I said, I get pain in my wrists very easily. So when I discovered that solvent is just like the best of both worlds, you're getting a smooth outcome, and you're able to take off the pressure off of your wrists. The only thing it does do is it is a paint thinner, so technically it does remove some of the pigment on the brush, but this is what allows you to blend and then layer, blend and then layer. So you're able to add many, many more layers than you would if you were just to go straight to burnishing, because this gives you, you're pushing the pencil into the tooth without damaging it. So that's a huge benefit to using this method. All right, and that is solvent. The next one, well, the next two I don't use very often. I'm going to do the pencil first. So they make a pencil blender, or this is a colorless blender from Prismacolor. This is usually the one I use when I do use it for like tiny details and corners and such. So I know they do make a few different types, but I prefer this one. So basically this is another option of blending where, oops, you don't have to press very hard, but you can still use the pencil as the blender without using solvent. So this is, again, another way people like to blend. I typically don't use it very much because I find solvent to be, I guess, easier and it's smoother, but this does work really great. I mean, if you've always just layered or burnished, this, you don't have to use much pressure. You do have to go over it a few times if you do use light pressure, but I just like the break of using a layer of solvent. It kind of gives you a break from using the pencil, and I prefer the outcome, but both are great options. I mean, it's a pretty smooth transition here with this pencil, and it's perfect for when you have tons of little like tiny details in the corners that you just don't want to take a risk of using the brush and pushing solvent where it's not supposed to go. So this is another great option to add to your to how you're blending. Again, it does create the flakes. That's just one thing anything, you know, any pencil's going to do when you're putting that much pressure on the paper. But I think it's a another great tool to keep in mind. And like I said, every single drawing is, you're going to probably approach differently. There's not one method that I use with every single drawing. Yeah, solvent mostly, but there are certain ones where I like to mix it up and try something different because it works better for me at the time. And now this final one, which I never use, but it is an option if you want to do, you know, maybe a background or any other small areas that you want to get into. The Prismacolor makes a colorless blender. I know they typically use it for markers, but it works for colored pencil. So there are two ends to this one. There's one that is a almost like a brush pen. So I'll do one side with the brush pen. Now I don't feel like it blends as good as the other ones, but what it does do is just smooth out areas very quickly. So it's kind of an option other than solvent. It does smell though, because it's a pretty potent smelling marker, but if you wanted to just kind of smooth out an area that looks a little grainy, this is a great option to use. So that's that side. I think this one's going to be better because it's a much firmer tip on the brush. Yeah. So this side works much better if you're trying to get a nice smooth flat looking surface. And the only problem with a marker is that it will dry out eventually. So, you know, it's a great option for using it here and there, but if you're going to use it all the time, it could probably get expensive. With solvent, I feel like it lasts forever. You can always burnish, you can always layer. The blending pencil lasts quite a while, and they're fairly inexpensive. But that's kind of cool too, because the marker, you have two options in the pressures that you're using. You can do it light and leave it a little bit grainy, or you can press a little harder and get that. But those are my 5 methods of blending, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please check out my other videos and my Patreon page, and I will see you guys in the next video.